Hi all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to share an update with you about the status of Scott Peterson's case out of the state of California. I recently did a video letting you know that not only was Scott Peterson's death sentence overturned by the California Supreme Court, but that the court also ordered a criminal court judge to reevaluate Scott's case in its entirety to decide whether or not he deserves a whole new trial as a result of juror misconduct. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you should go check out the video I did recently that explains it. But, just so you have an idea, Scott Peterson has been sitting on death row in San Quentin prison since 2005 after he was convicted in 2004 of the deaths of his pregnant wife, Laci Peterson, and their unborn son, Connor. I think you could fairly say that back then, Scott Peterson was our Chris Watts. If you aren't familiar with Chris Watts, I have videos about him too. Help yourself. Scott had a hearing on the status of his case on October 23rd of 2020, but there was no word yet on the decision to retry his criminal case, just on the penalty phase of his case. I found the hearing interesting because for the first time in 16 years, since he was locked up and the key was thrown away, Scott Peterson, kinda sorta, may have the upper hand. Don't click off. Hear me out. I see you rolling your eyes, but you love me and you know it. Okay, so, back in August, when the California Supreme Court overturned his death penalty sentence, he was essentially left hanging without a sentence for his crimes, but he was still locked up. Each and every day he sits behind bars now, he's serving time for a sentence that has yet to be determined. After the court handed down this decision, prosecutors had to go back and reevaluate the penalty phase of his case to decide whether or not they'd elect to retry it to pursue a death penalty sentence for a second time, because they had the right to do so. Now, due to sentencing guidelines and timing, etc., the moment the court handed down the decision to overturn his sentence, the clock started ticking for the court to give him a new sentence, which put prosecutors under the gun to make a decision. Following me so far? Who am I kidding? You're probably way ahead of me, but humor me and act like you're not, okay? Okay. Now, since the court admitted that it felt it had no choice but to overturn his death sentence due to court error because it found that jurors were dismissed during the selection process if they admitted that they were opposed to the death penalty, which is unconstitutional, Scott's attorney pounced and filed an appeal to have his criminal case evaluated for court errors as well, claiming juror misconduct that went unaddressed by the court. So, the California Supreme Court looked into that as well and determined that his case needed to be reviewed for possible retrial altogether. So the prosecution is already scrambling to decide whether or not to exercise their right to retry the penalty phase of the case when the court decides that he may just get an entirely new trial. But they won't know until the judge assigned to review his case hands down his decision. So, the prosecution has to keep moving forward, deciding what to do, because they're under the gun to make a decision, knowing that if Scott is granted a whole new trial, they won't even get the opportunity to go for the death sentence again. So at the hearing, the prosecution suggests that the defense needs to waive time for their decision to retry the penalty phase until the court decides whether to grant Scott a whole new trial or not, because if he gets a whole new trial, then there won't be a new penalty phase trial at that time, which makes sense. But then the defense claps back with, "We're not waiving any time until we know what we're waiving it for." He was actually nicer about it than that, but I think he should have said it with attitude, so I kinda did. Anyway, so the prosecution, you know what? Can I just narrate it the way I heard it? It's much easier for me that way. I bog myself down way too much with formalities when all you want is the info. So, you know what? I'm just gonna let my hair down, start over, and give you the street version of what happened. Or at least the way I think it should have gone down. If you prefer the more professional version of the event, I will refer you to the YouTube channel where I watched it when I'm finished. Okay, so the prosecution's like, look, It's not our fault that the court decided to review his case for retrial while we were still deciding whether or not to pursue the death penalty again. It makes no sense for us to waste time and money moving forward while we're waiting to find out if he's getting a whole new trial. So, since the defense opened this whole can of worms, they're going to have to waive time towards Scott's speedy trial until the judge makes his decision. To which the defense responded, "Oh, hell no. It's not my client's fault that the court screwed up, and he's sitting behind bars without a sentence, waiting to hear how bad the court screwed up, to the point where he may get a whole new trial. So, no, we will not be waiving any more time until we know what we're waiving it for. So, unless the prosecution puts on record here and now what their intentions are, they get nothing, unless they'd be interested in me filing 100 additional habeas corpus motions stating how my client's rights are being violated while we're waiting for a decision." Now remember, guys, none of this was actually said. I'm just telling you what I heard. So, the prosecution went damn, then slammed his pompous ass into check and said, yes, they are planning to retry Scott and pursue the death penalty. Ouch. Now, at this point, not gonna lie, I paused the video and went and popped some popcorn because the shit was getting good. So, while Scott's attorney was licking his wounds, the judge asked him how they'd like to proceed, and he informed her that since this is the first he's heard of the prosecution's intent to pursue a new death sentence, he needs time to confer with his client. Well, let me tell you, the prosecution didn't take too kindly to that, since the defense was not willing to give them the time to make their decision. So, they informed the judge that if they weren't willing to waive time to see if Scott would be granted a new trial, then they needed to start the process of jury selection right away, because they were definitely going after that bitch, and they were under time constraints to do it. I like him already. So, when Scott's attorney finally got that the prosecution ain't playing, he was all, whoa, 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 whoa. Calm the F down, dude. I was just playing. My bad. In the interest of being economical, he said, we will probably waive the time. Just let me talk to my client first. So, the prosecution let the judge know that it better happen quickly, 'cause they got a jury to pick. And the judge gave him until November 6th, when they'll have another hearing. So, that's pretty much how it went down. Interesting, huh? I know. I need a hobby. If you prefer the more formal version of the hearing, you can find it on the YouTube channel J is for Justice podcast, under Scott Peterson hearing or Scott Peterson gets new trial. If you happen to go watch it, please consider supporting her channel by liking the video and or subscribing to her channel. She always puts out good content, including live court hearings. I watch them on her channel, then break it down to the street version on mine. So, we complement each other's channels pretty well. Now, back to Scott possibly having the upper hand here. Scott needs a new sentence. The prosecution wants to retry the penalty phase of the trial, and the court is waiting on a decision about whether or not he'll be granted a whole new trial. Because of Scott's right to a speedy trial, the prosecution has no choice but to move forward with jury selection, which they will spend time and money on and ultimately may not need if he's granted a new trial altogether. It's Scott's right to waive his right to a speedy trial if he wants to wait for the court to make a decision about his criminal trial. And it is in the court's best interest economically for him to do so. Now, I'm not a Scott supporter, but he does have the court in an interesting position to where, if he plays his cards right, he can force decisions that may be in his best interest. Consider what he already knows. He knows his case is 16 plus years old at this point, so there's a good chance that original evidence may have been lost and witness accounts may not be as credible anymore. He also knows the national attention his case drew because he's already filed a motion saying he didn't receive a fair trial as a result of all of media attention. So, he knows he'd probably get to use the same complaint again if he gets a new trial. People are going to lose their minds. Plus, he said he didn't think he received proper representation in his first trial because he didn't get to participate fully in his defense. He also claimed that witnesses who said they saw Laci walking the dog that day and knew about the break in at the house across the street were not properly questioned and followed up on. These people may have been able to raise questions of reasonable doubt during the trial. What are the chances they'll be found now? So, Scott will have that to use as well. If his attorney suggests that their testimony could have made a difference to a jury, then that could raise questions in jurors' minds. If I was Scott's attorney, I would advise him not to waive any time to wait for the criminal court to make a decision about granting him a new trial, therefore forcing the prosecution to move forward with jury selection for his penalty phase. Why? Because they don't want to. They want to wait so they don't waste time and money. If he refuses to waive his right to a speedy trial, he's going to force the court's hand to put pressure on the judge reviewing his criminal case to make a quick decision. Scott already knows that the only reason why his case is being reviewed for retrial is due to juror misconduct, so the court's going to look really bad if it ignores what happened again. It can't. His death sentence was overturned due to the court error, and his case is being reviewed for juror misconduct that the court ignored. It can't make another bad decision in his case. So, once the judge is reviewing his criminal case, is pressured to make a quick decision without allowing him the proper time to review it, he will have no choice but to err on the side of doing the right thing by granting Scott a new trial. Once he gets his new trial, the penalty phase trial goes away, the slate wipes clean, and everything starts over. Now, the clock starts ticking again, because he still has the right to a speedy trial, which, again, if I was his attorney, I would advise him not to waive his right to. God, I hope his attorney isn't watching this. But he probably is, looking for advice on how to help Scott, and I'm screwing myself. But anyway, remember, it's the prosecution's burden to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, not the defense's. So, by not waiving his right to a speedy trial, he's forcing the prosecution to put together a rock-solid case based on old testimony, old police reports, old witness accounts, and possibly missing evidence. That's not going to be easy, especially under time constraints. Not to mention how carefully scrutinized jury selection will be, so as to avoid a mistrial due to court error. As his attorney, I would watch every move the court made like a hawk and pounce on even the slightest glimpse of impropriety. As much as I hate to even think this, Scott could look out and get a jury that just isn't convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he's guilty, and he could walk free. Or he could be found guilty of lesser charges and not be sentenced to a death sentence the second time. Either way, the thought of Laci's loved ones possibly having to endure another trial is hard to take. They've been through enough. So, now we wait to see how it all plays out. If Scott gets a new trial, then you know he played his cards right. If he happens to get a lesser sentence or, God forbid, found not guilty, then you know his attorney watched this video and took my advice. Then you can hate on me in the comments all you want, 'cause I'll deserve it. But it's not over yet. Scott still needs to face Laci's family again in court, and they'll have powerful testimony against him. I bet they didn't forget one single detail, because to them, it probably still feels like it just happened yesterday. And before you get all bummed out about this video, I'll offer you some words of hope to get you through this. 2 words of hope. Ready? Amber Frey. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I want to welcome all my new subscribers, as well as thank the rest of you for all the support you give my channel. It means the world to me. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you on my next video.